Welcome back to the List Building Lifestyle. I'm your host, Igor Kafetz, and today I'm hosting one of America's top copywriters. His name is Bob Bly. He's an author of over 100 books, and he actually has something of substance to say because we're going to be discussing some of the age-old issues in copy and selling. And to start with, I want to touch on the issue of copy length because we are entering the age of, they used to say that people have the attention span of a goldfish, but now I really don't know what to say. People went from watching social media content to watching short form content to now watching 5-second videos and really can't really sustain their attention on even 30 seconds of content. But in spite of all that, should we write shorter copy? Should we sell faster? Should we avoid it altogether and just produce 5-second videos? Mr. Bob Bly, what the hell do we do?
Well, the truth of the matter is there's no right length for every application. Some, in fact, do work better with short copy. And you can test these things. So that's what people don't understand. You can do an A-B split, as we call it, test, let's say, just long copy versus short copy. So you don't have to guess at it. You can measure it precisely. But short copy will work well with certain audiences, certain products, and certain media. And with others, long copy will work better. Example, you see people say, you can't have a video longer than 3 minutes. Well, the most successful video sales letters for companies like Agora Publishing and others average a half hour in length. So how do you reconcile that opinion with that fact?
Well, you don't. And you're really preaching to the choir because my latest VSL is a 42-minute VSL. And so far, it's been the highest converting piece I've produced. But I will do my best to play devil's advocate. And I'll try to poke holes in your opinion as much as I can to make for a great conversation and to really offer another, another side of this conversation. So here's two observations. One observation is, and you mentioned this, 3-minute content, 3-minute videos, right? Here's what I'll say about that. I do a lot of YouTube ads, and on YouTube ads, I did notice this to be true, where if my ad is shorter than 3 minutes, it does tend to operate better. It tends to generate higher view rate, which is logical because view rate is relative to the length of the video and how much of it people watch, but it also gets higher click-through rate. So in that way, maybe specifically to YouTube and specifically to YouTube ads, it does pay better to produce shorter form content.
Again, that's what I had said earlier. It depends on the medium, the application. And yes, I have also found that for YouTube, 2 to 3 minutes, it's not a magic number, works best. Also, when you're putting a video on a homepage of like a business to business company, I just did one for a company that does corporate security, 2-3 minutes seems to work best. But on that same site, there's a section of educational videos on security that are 10 minutes each.
No, that's actually very true because even the 3-minute ad still links to a 40-minute VSL. So you still treat it as a process rather than as an event, right? So when people talk about long form copy versus short form copy, some parts of the process, some parts of the funnel can be shorter, but the funnel will still be long. And at some point, once the customer or prospect is invested enough, they'll read the 24-page sales letter, won't they?
What's also, yes, but what also is interesting to me when people say long copy doesn't work, in the pre-internet days, we found that often the longer the sales letter, the better it pulled. A guy I know who was writing for Playboy Book Club, he wrote a 4-page letter, it did okay. Then he said to them, let's test an 8-page letter, did better. And then they did 12-page and it did better. And they couldn't believe it. They said, why? He goes, it's a book club. Your audience is readers. But back in that day, all the copy was in the front end letter. Now, some of the copies, as you said, in the funnel, some is in the email, some is in the Facebook ad, some is in the video, some is in the lander. So it's the same length, it's just spread out more.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I guess that's why YouTube traffic is very likely to watch a long VSL or webinar. I mean, we do webinars, and uh, I participate in different masterminds. Just yesterday, I had a call as a part of my mastermind with a few other guys who do webinars. It actually is just guys. We don't yet have a woman that mastermind. So if you're interested, reach out to me. Um, so we were talking about this, and the question of length comes up a lot with webinars. They're like, how soon should you pitch, and how long the webinar should be, and if it's really long, people won't watch it, and so on and so forth. Well, over the last 5 years, I've tested different versions of the same offer with different versions of the webinar, and as well as created different offers with different webinar lengths. And what I've discovered is I can have a webinar that is 90 minutes long, and the same offer being sold over the course of 3 hours, and the 3 hour webinar will pull better. And sometimes even they'll watch the 3 hour webinar, but then they'll go watch it again on the replay just to get the key points. So it seems like if somebody's really invested or interested in your solution, there's really no, almost, I guess it's relative, but almost no limit to how much content and how much time they're going to invest into consuming your content, whether it's like 3 pages, 10 pages, or 30 pages.
Well, that is true. And when I explain to people, I say to them, when you say no one reads copy and therefore we should keep it short, you're not understanding this. People in general may not read your copy, but the people who do read it are buyers, and those are the only ones you care about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so true. So yesterday I was faced with a dilemma. So I had to go and look up
Mhm.
a real estate related issue, as I'm involved in a real estate related dispute. And what's interesting is, like, I usually am very bad at reading like official document, like law and summaries, and it's just boring to me. I like reading stories. I like reading copy, but I hate reading like a clauses from a contract and things like that. But when the issue came up, guess what I've done? I spent 2 hours going close by close, word by word, line by line, really reading into every tiny little thing. Why? Because I had a goal, I had a purpose, I had a problem that I needed to solve. And as a result, my attention kind of zeroed in on that particular resource that I needed to go through. And it was a really long resource, by the way.
And that is the point. If people are interested, they'll read. There was a famous story in the 50s about an ad agency that did a full page tabloid newspaper ad or full page newspaper ad for Maxwell Sackheim, who started the Book of the Month Club. And they brought in the ad, and it was tiny type, the entire page of the newspaper. And he says, no, and Sackheim said, no one will read this. And the copywriter said, well, I can make sure you read it, and just by changing the headline. And the headline, my headline would be, this ad is all about Maxwell Sackheim.
Yes, nice. It's just a testament to human nature, I guess. We're all selfish creatures, aren't we?
Well, we're more interested. My mentor, Sig Rosenblum, used to say, what the reader's interested in is the reader. His problems are her problems, her concerns, her fears, and her desires. And if you're talking about that, they'll stick with you.
It truly is so. And I see so many people drop the ball writing this boring, irrelevant copy. And copy is, of course, not just an email or a sales letter. It could be a post on social media. It could be a video. It could be a content you're producing by holding your phone in front of your face and yelling into it. So everything has to be related to the end user. Everything has to be talking about their world, their problems, their concerns. There's this 27-word persuasion sentence, which I'm sure you're familiar with, where it says, people will do anything for people who throw rocks at their enemies, allay their fears, celebrate their goals or dreams, confirm their suspicions, and there's something else. But
I know the quote. I can't remember the other item.
yeah, but the point being is that people always think of themselves, They look at the world through their own set of eyes, with their own set of preferences, and you're irrelevant until you talk about the things that are dear to their heart, right?
Well, some of our listeners will know what I'm about to say, and others won't. You know the WIIFM formula, right?
Yes.
What's in it for me? That's all they care about.
That is so true. But it's only many years into running my agency and my info business that I truly learned that, because I really think in order to write truly great copy, and you can talk about that. Of course, you've been writing copy for like what, 40 years now.
Over 40 years.
It's crazy. Like, I think in the first 5 years, I truly did not understand, like on a DNA level. I mean, what it means to step into someone else's world and write copy that actually hits.
Similarly, in my first few years where I was in the corporate world, it was all about the company. We called it manufacturer's copy. And also, we didn't know, because no one taught me, that you're supposed to dive into the mind of the reader. And one of our readers for one of our product lines, I worked for an aerospace company, were fighter pilots. I had no idea how they thought, and it's a very engaged, emotional audience. I didn't bother to find out. I didn't talk to one fighter pilot.
So, so
How stupid.
so how did you like? First of all, how did you realize your mistake, and what did you do to learn from that experience?
Well, this was corporate copy. And then one day, I went to another manufacturer, similar experience. But one day, my boss there throws a magazine on my desk called Direct Marketing Magazine. He says, "We get this. You want to read it?" And these were direct marketers who lived and died by response. Consultants, agencies, people who were product managers, marketing directors, copywriters. And I read it and I go, "Holy moly. We at Westinghouse and Co., we do everything wrong. This is what works." And that's how I learned it.
What was like your first corporate piece that you wrote using the direct response principles, where you truly understood the market? What were you selling, and what were you writing about, and what was it like? Was it the brochure? Was it the postcard? Was it the magazine? What was it?
I had an interesting one. It probably wasn't the first, but we sold a product called a mesh mist eliminator. Basically, it was wire knitted into a sock and shoved down a smokestack in a plant to stop pollution. And so what I did is I had them cut small pieces of this, and we mailed it to prospects with what looked like a shipping tag. And the headline was on the envelope was free mesh mist eliminator enclosed. And it did tremendously well because it got the reader's curiosity. They get this thing, it's solid. Now when they open it, it looks like a shipped package because the letter was written on what looked like a shipping label.
Interesting. So that's the first use of 3D mail then.
It was my first use of 3D mail.
So I guess one of the first uses. And who was getting the package? Like, or was it just anyone, or any particular
people? Our audience for this product was people who run industrial manufacturing operations that pollute.
Interesting. Wow. Let me ask you this: what was the? So this is pretty interesting. But what was like the weirdest product you had to write copy for, like ever?
I can answer that easily. I pick up the phone one day, and the guy says, "This is no joke." He goes, "Hi, Bob. This is Clarence Boner." I said, "Okay." And he says, "I need a copywriter." And I said, "What's your product?" He says, "Grave blankets." Do you even know what that is? I didn't know what it was. It's some kind of knitted grass that for respect you would place over someone's grave, and he says, and we'll need other ads. I run a cemetery. And when he said, "I run a cemetery," the headline that immediately popped into my head was "Dead?" ? But I didn't tell him that.
Wow. So did you take on the job?
I think I may have, or something similar. I seem to recall yes, but I don't have that sample,
Interesting.
and probably I didn't do a great job at it because I understand cemeteries and death. I have written in that industry since then, but I didn't quite get the idea of a grave blanket. I mean, you're already dead. You don't need a blanket.
Yeah, I guess you don't really care. But my guess would be you're writing this for somebody who wants to show respect to the dead.
Yes, that's how funeral and cemetery copy generally works. You want to show love, respect, and and treat them as they deserve. You don't want to be. That's why people, the industry, they spend $8,000 or $9,000 in this beautiful brass and varnished wood coffin that people are going to see for 10 minutes, and then you're going to put underground. When a pine box would do just as well, but people feel I can't put my dad or my wife in a pine box.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
I come from
The
Israel.
best ad I ever saw
No, go ahead.
The best ad I ever saw for a cemetery was written by a guy, Richard Silver. This was decades ago, and it was a newspaper ad in the Daily News where the funeral owner, I think the guy's name was Morris Shipper, was selling mausoleum space,
Ooh,
and the headline, which I'll never forget, was "Rich Man's Burial Now Less Costly Than a Watery Pauper's Grave."
wow. That is a good. I mean, even today, that's still a really, really good
That's
headline.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's really crazy. It's two things pop to mind. First of, I was born in Ukraine, but I lived for many, many years in Israel. I grew up in Israel, and in Israel they bury you in a bag, in a body bag. They don't use coffins. So the whole idea of investing like 30 grand in a coffin is a bit of a crazy idea to guys like me.
It
But
is crazy.
but another thing, it reminded me of this joke that I heard Dan Kennedy tell about this woman. Her husband died, and she went to the funeral home and she started like looking into the coffins, and she's like, "Oh, I want this pine box." And the salesman says, "Well, no, you don't want a pine box. You want to like show
I
proper."
think I know this, but go
Yeah,
ahead.
but like our listeners probably don't. But it's like you don't want a pine
Yeah, tell it.
box. You want like a proper, wooden box, whatever, oak box or whatever. And
Oak
yeah,
mahogany.
you want the velvet inside, and you want gold bars and this and that. So he ends up upselling her up to like 30 grand worth of stuff. And later that week at the ceremony, two of this guy's best friends, they come up to the funeral, to the box. They look at the guy, look at each other, and one of them says to another, he says, "Well, she could have thrown an extra couple of grand and buried him in a Cadillac." So,
That's a good one. I like that.
but yeah, like I really, but this goes back to buyers being completely irrational. Yesterday, I was hosting a coaching call with my coaching clients, and we were talking about this. How when you're selecting a niche, you need to select a niche with an irrational buying behavior. Be it golfers or anything else, because it's those markets that are most profitable, and the markets where you can go and write this really engaging, great copy that can produce big results.
Yeah. Now I work in both types of markets, and some of my markets are not that way. But even the ones that you would think are dry and rational, there's a lot of emotion in all of them. And I discovered this early in my career. I was writing for a company that made mainframe software, and our brochures were all technical. And then I went to a luncheon they had for their buyers. And these people were arguing over these obscure technical issues. What's better, MVS or CMS? And they were like throwing fists. And I said, this is emotional.
Yeah, anything that people can fight over is a
Yes.
great market to
Or
be in.
argue over.
Yes, and even scientists, like the great example is the sitcom. What is it called? The Big Bang Theory, right? The guys are scientists; they're geeks, but they literally geek out on certain things about science, making them extremely emotional about it. Which is
Absolutely, yes.
yeah, which is what you want to look for as the copywriter. You want to look um, for that irrational behavior, because that's the behavior you will be talking about, or you will be leveraging or studying in your copy. which is, again, so many people just don't do. They write really, really boring, really dry copy. And I think we're entering an age. I'm not sure if you've seen this or not, but a couple weeks ago, they released Chat GPT. Have you seen it?
I've seen it. Yes.
So it doesn't really write great copy yet, and I hope it will write better than it is today. But I think we're now entering an age where we're going to have lots and lots and lots of copywriters use AI to write surface level ad copy.
Yeah. Now the question, as you said, is will it improve to where it writes really kick butt copy? I'm not a good futurist, so I have no idea. And I tell people, all I know is it certainly doesn't do that now. And if you think it does, you're sadly mistaken.
Yeah, people who like think it does, simply they don't understand what good copy looks like, right? But I think for like for example, we've got a problem whenever we coach people on. I teach people how to build a list, which means I also have to teach them how to write emails. And the problem I keep running into is that most people don't want to write. They don't want to write emails, even if I show them tricks and tips on how to not write it, but rather say it, right? You can write out an email by speaking it into your voice recorder or an app on your phone. Now there's apps that instantly transcribe what you're saying, so you can actually speak it into your computer or phone and instantly have your email properly formatted in front of you. And yet it's still, people won't do it. But I'm assuming that the more programs like ChatGPT, Jasper, Copy Pro, the more they develop, the more we're going to see people kind of be okay with that. Like, but there's so many great practical uses to it just in the day-to-day life, not copywriting wise. Like for example, my wife, she can speak English, but she doesn't feel comfortable, writing. And whenever she has to sit down and write like an email, like for example, an email to Amazon customer support about a product that wasn't delivered, or an email to a real estate agent or whatever, right? She calls me for help. So now she's got something like ChatGPT that gets the job done because it can properly write something like that doesn't require like amazing copywriting skills or whatever. But when we talk copy, ad angles, emails, subject lines, I'll give you that though. ChatGPT, and I've been playing with this, does a good job with subject lines.
Can I interrupt? There's another one that I discovered quite a while ago. I wrote an article about it. Persado. I don't know if they're still around or you know them. Persado. And I talked to him. I said, "So this can write?" He goes, "No. What we do, our sweet spot is subject lines because we have a huge database of all the subject lines and their conversion and click rates, so we can rapidly combine elements of the best ones to write subject lines. And usually, when our software does that, we often outperform copywriters, but we can't write anything longer than that." So I agree. This guy found, I forget his name, but Persado was the firm, and that's what they did.
Interesting. They got a real competitor in ChatGPT, because ChatGPT I would just like approach, I will put like a really plain subject line sometimes, like how to lose weight or something, and I'll say rewrite it 3 times for response, and it'll be like how to shed 22 pounds in 10 days, or
Which is better, of
of
course.
course, because it knows to add
Yeah.
specifics, it knows to add weird numbers, it knows to add a unique mechanism. Like all these principles have been incorporated into its programming, and it's just it truly is brilliant. Like it truly is brilliant for sure. But the copywriters aren't dead yet. And let me ask you, I know you said you're not a futurist, but I'm just interested in your just opinion. I'm not going to hold you to it in 5 years. I'm not going to come back and say what you said. So what do you see the copywriting industry being in, say, 10 years from now?
I hate to answer that, I don't know, but here's some of the trends. I see that copywriting at the lower levels of the craft, the Fiverr levels, the Upwork level, is becoming or has become a commodity service. Content writing is not wholly a commodity service, but in most aspects it has. The ones that where it's not a commodity is as you said about your VSL, it's direct response, long format copy designed to sell products directly off the web or directly off the page. That is still a skill that is in demand and most people and software does not have it.
Yeah, it's funny because software has already kind of stepped into the domain of conversational copy, like all the chatbots,
Yes,
right? It's been developing pretty fast over there, but it's still not.
that's true. Yeah.
But that's because it's short form, like you said. Long form, it's still incapable of really dissecting it.
It's short form and it manipulates information. It does not speak to the human heart.
Can you unpack this? This is interesting.
Yeah, it's good at putting together facts. Sometimes it can do more, like shed is a good visceral word.
Yeah,
But William Faulkner said the only purpose of writing is to address the conflicts in the human heart. In other words, deep, what we call deep emotion. And, uh, that doesn't seem to be in the capability of thinking machines yet. I may be wrong. Maybe I don't know about it, but certainly what is it, GPT? I've seen it, does not have that as far
no,
as I can
not
tell.
yet, no. But there are pre-programmed chat apps, as well as I'm assuming they're not going to start using more AI to be like responding to people in real time. Like if somebody lands on your order form.
Yeah, well, that they can do, but that's just communication. Our direct response copy that you do and I do, it's selling, and that's at a different level.
Yes, that is. And
And a lot of people don't realize this. Younger people, I didn't mean to cut you off, but people don't realize, or some people don't realize, that what's more powerful than facts and information in selling is emotion. Emotion beats logic.
yeah.
You need both, but emotion is dominant.
Yeah, first it's like the emotional decision that comes first, and then logic, we use it to sort of justify the decision we already made.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, and you know this if you ever tried talking your friend or relative out of like buying a car that they already like mentally committed to buying. Like I had this pleasure last year of one of my friends wanting to buy a Hyundai Tucson that was in two accidents, but it fit his budget, and he was actually tired of looking, I'm assuming. And so I was like, frothing at the mouth. I was like trying to convince him not to buy a used car that's been in two accidents. Like you're asking for trouble, right? And he was like frothing at the mouth, telling me why I am wrong. When if this was a week ago, right, we would both be on the same page. And he told me, it's like, no, you should never buy, a car that's been in an accident. That's the first thing he's looking for. Wasn't it an accident or not? But it's like, maybe he found a guy he trusted and not like a dealer. Something was up there, or maybe it's his wife who just made the decision. Sometimes the wife will make a decision, and it's actually easier for the husband to just go and buy the damn car than to try and argue with his wife.
Yeah, I try not to argue with mine because I'm afraid. So I get what he's doing.
Yeah, same here, same here. So one thing we really just broke down in a great way was long copy, short copy, boring copy, emotional copy, AI in copy, etc. Now I want to switch the conversation a little bit because I've been to an event in I want to say October, and at that event we had a lot of people there who were making money by selling on Facebook chat. So they have an army of setters who are getting people, who are messaging people on Facebook and trying to like close the deals using conversations or conversational copy or conversational offer, whatever. But it created an idea or a sense in the room. In the room, by the way, full of direct response internet marketers who are like hardcore closers, if you will. It created a sense that selling is like a dirty word now. Like if you get on a call with somebody to sell them, or if you get on any kind of presentation and you don't teach what you sell, that's like a sin.
That is the fashion of today. And I don't mean to say a prejudicial statement, but especially the younger people are, the more they believe it. They've been taught salespeople are scum, selling is scummy, and they'll tell me, no, we don't sell anymore. What you write copy is irrelevant. We have conversations. And I remember in one of my early jobs, a couple of jobs, I did selling. And if I would have come back to the sales manager at the end of the week, and he said, how'd you do? I said, well, I had a lot of good conversations. I would be fired. You at some point you have to close the deal. And copy, where it comes in best, is it does more than this. It can close the deal. But if you're just talking endlessly, you don't get anywhere.
Yeah, yeah, and you definitely got to make those offers and have the stomach to pitch. I'm really grateful for listening to a lot of Dan Kennedy material early on, because Dan Kennedy, one thing he
He's
does,
great. I love Dan Kennedy.
yes, he's a legend. And what he does really well is that I think that the thing that I really like is that he always suggests books you should read, right? He'll always, like, almost in passing mention, like, oh, great book by this guy, or great book by that guy, or there's a book about selling, a book about this. And so I don't recall where, but he did suggest reading a book or listening to a talk by somebody. I think it was called Selling the Noble Profession. Was there something like that?
I have seen it. I have read it, but I can't remember the
I'm
author.
sure it's either Zig Ziglar or Jim Rohn or one of the superstars of the time. So
It may be, yeah.
so basically the idea is that I'm trying to say is I feel lucky because I was a part of that generation. I'm only 34. So 10 years ago, I was really, you know, afraid of selling. I was afraid of rejection most. I wasn't afraid of selling. I was afraid of rejection. I didn't like the idea of pitching somebody something and them, saying no. Although people don't really say no, they kind of just come up with weird excuses like, I have to meditate on it. It's not the right time. I have to talk to my spouse about it. Oh, I just put all my money into Bitcoin and blah, 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 blah. But I was really afraid of that. And, I really hated the idea. As a result, I hated the idea of selling. I really couldn't really take on the identity of a salesperson. And then I started listening to that sort of stuff. I listened to the talk. I read a book by Zig Ziglar. I think it's called Selling 101. And so I didn't realize it back then, but it they really, all these talks and books really did me a huge service, because they sold me on the idea that selling is a good thing. In fact, selling is what keeps the economy going. Like we talk about, obviously there's doctors and there's all engineers and all the other professions, but you take the sales force out of the economy, it'll not move. We'll all be dead.
Not only that, but people will say to me who work in companies, selling is scummy. I don't want to sell. I said, you must not believe in your company and your product. If you have a good product, wouldn't you want to help people by showing them how to solve their problems with it? It makes no logical sense. But we're ingrained as a society to have low opinions, or a lot of us have low opinions of salespeople. And the classic might be Arthur Miller's book, Death of a Salesman. Portrays salespeople very unfavorably.
Yeah, that's really, quacks like a salesman, blah blah blah. And I think it's so wrong. I think it's so counterintuitive to the way the real world works. It's something that I've been kind of realizing the more the older I grow, is that the way the world really works is nothing like we've been shown in the movies, or the way they talk about in the newspapers. You really do need to sell. In fact, you're selling every day. And as a parent, I need to sell ideas to my kids all the time, right? If I was a bad salesman or a bad marketer, I genuinely think that I would have been a much worse of a father. I mean, not to say that I'm a bad father. I'm just saying that I couldn't even be a good father, because I would be terrible at communicating ideas to my kids, ideas that are really, really important for them to embrace, not just to know, but to truly, truly embrace.
There was a superstar salesman. I think he was financial or insurance in the 70s or 80s. His name was Jim Hansberger. Excuse me, Hansberger. And he wrote a book called Everybody's a Salesman at Least Part of the Time. Just what you said.
That's true. That's super true. And if you don't sell products, you probably sell ideas, you know. And it's really funny is that if you don't sell other people on ideas, or if you're not able to, right, they sell you on theirs,
That's a good point.
right? You're buying something, you know, you're buying a product or an idea all the time. It's just the question is, are you like, are you being sold to, or are you selling? That's really the question.
It's a very good point. I like that.
Cool. So let's say we do have a listener. I'm sure there's at least one who is like feeling yucky about the sales profession or the sales process. Let's say they're not really like a face-to-face salesperson. They're not like on the phone selling, but they're involved in some form of marketing, which is true to say about anyone who listens to us. Maybe they're a professional, like a real estate agent. Maybe they are an affiliate marketer who needs to write copy for a product, like a marketing email or an ad. So what would you tell them, like the one piece of advice you could share, maybe a story that would help them recognize, see and understand just how important this is?
Well, one of them is I used to say to clients, I won't write for any product that is illegal, immoral, or fattening. So if you feel good about the product, you will have a natural enthusiasm that overcomes it. Instead of selling, think of it, if you like the product, and I don't sell products that I don't like or are not interested in, the way to present it is not to sell, 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 but it's just Paul Hollingshead, who's a great copywriter, says talk to people. He calls it the bar stool style. Like you're in a bar and they're in the bar stool next to you, and you're talking about this to them, this great thing you like, and your enthusiasm is contagious, and that's how you can feel better about it.
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting way to put it, because a couple of days ago I was at my daughter's. She goes to this acting school called Star School, where they do like dancing, acting, plays, and things like that. And usually, whenever she goes there, it's like a 3 to 4 hour thing. Like it's either a rehearsal or whatever, and that means I get to spend a lot of time with other parents. And so a couple of days ago, I had to go and I had like 2 hours to kill, and I started playing with ChatGPT, just trying to come up with different ways to use it and different, you know, testing it. Will it do well with this or that request? And so one of them asked me, what was it? And I showed him. And I went into this mode where I was so enthusiastic about it. I truly believe it's a great invention. And I became contagious. What ended up happening is I ended up getting 12 parents involved in the conversation, and manually personally signed every single one of them into Chat GPT, because my enthusiasm was like really really contagious. And what I ended up doing, anytime someone new would step into the conversation, I would like find ways to use it in a way that is meaningful to them, right? So going back to the copy that's engaging, that's important for people. For example, one buddy of mine is recently divorced. So him and his wife divorced, but the daughter kept going to the same acting school. So I know he's recently divorced, maybe 6 months ago. So I said, hey, check this out. It's like, and I pull his phone and I say to ChatGPT, I'm like, craft a divorce agreement between, you know, this and this, about settling for this amount, and you know, this person gets to keep the car and this person gets to keep the house, and child support is mutual, yada yada yada. Right. So kind of set a few parameters, and bam, in front of his eyes, it's like crafting the whole agreement that he just had to pay a lawyer several $1,000s to craft. Then someone else joins the conversation, and she's a mother of three. And you know, knowing something about mothers with lots of kids, one problem is you always have to think of ways to think of things that you need to cook so your kids will eat, because kids are picky eaters. So you can't just cook something random. It has to be something that fits their preferences, right? So I was like, check this out. So I list 10 ingredients. I just said, tell me 10 things your kids eat. So I list the ingredients, and then I said to ChatGPT, I was like, craft a cooking plan for a family of four using these ingredients, make sure that each meal includes at least one, meat ingredient or fish or whatever, and two vegetables. Bam, bam, bam. And you can see it on her face. She's like, she's like in awe. So this enthusiasm was genuine. I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I'm genuinely excited about the technology, and it transferred over in my communication to all the people I talk to about it. And as a result, kind of the copy, if you will, writes itself.
You know who Bill Bonner of Agora Publishing is.
Yes.
So years ago, decades ago, there was a lunch of Agora staff and freelance copywriters. And I was sitting close to Bill, and an Agora copywriter was sitting near us. And he's a friend of mine now. And Bill Bonner was talking about a certain approach to writing a copy, and this guy said, I don't like that. I couldn't do it that way. And Bill said, why? He said, because I don't believe it. It sounds like bullshit. And this guy, JF, said, then Bill said, then don't write it. You have to believe it or you can't do it.
And he's right. He's absolutely right. Sometimes I fall into this trap. I create my own products, but I also promote lots of other people's products, right? But it's funny that, I don't know if you've noticed this, and I know you have your own products too. You wrote tons of books, and so you should have a perspective on this that I really would love to hear. Sometimes it's harder for me to write copy for my own products than it is for someone else's. Like, I know my product is great, and at the same time, still I have doubts. Like, something is creeping, and it really holds me back from going full out with my copy. While for someone else's product that I'm promoting as an affiliate, obviously product I like, I can really write copy without putting my foot on the brakes, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think the reason that we have this, and it doesn't just apply to copy, but people or to product copy. People, for example, can't write their own resume. They just have a more difficult time writing about themselves than they do about writing other people, other things, or other objects. Now, even though you and I are students of psychology, I never investigated why this is the case. I just know that it is.
Yeah, and it truly is. It truly is. Well, thankfully, if you're struggling to write a resume, you can use ChatGPT, which I'm sure has a resume template built into it. So,
Yeah, and today there's tons of resume software and there's tons of resume writers. So unlike the old days where it was such agony because we had to format it on a typewriter, it would take like forever.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Let me ask you something else. One last thing. So you now lived through lots of different eras, the way the technology is developing, and we can focus specifically on the technology around writing, around content, around information, around sharing, right? So the way we kind of used to share it on paper, then we started, like, we lived through, I mean, even I lived through the floppy disk, the disk, the MP3, and everything else. So you, as somebody who has the perspective, looking back on all this time, can you maybe share maybe one, two, maybe three lessons or observations that come to mind when you think about all the different evolutions that we went through, technology wise, information wise, information sharing, information creating, just in general? Just feel free to make it about anything. It doesn't have to be marketing.
Well, the most revolutionary, and I can tell you why, was way back when Word, the PC. And the reason is, that the key to good copy is revision, is to rewrite. But back in the day, you'd write the copy and you say, I don't want to type this page over. Or you look at it and say, I should have another sentence or another paragraph here, but you can't fit it. So we were discouraged. And then when I got my first PC in 1981 or 82, I said, oh my God, I can just stick that paragraph in there. And it was a complete revolution. So that was the best tool. I think the other
Nice.
best, yeah, it's amazing. The other, because otherwise rewriting was hard. I mean, you don't remember this, but we used to do it on the IBM Selectric typewriter. And if you typed a mistake, we had whiteout liquid paper. I don't know if you know what that is.
No.
It's a liquid that you put on the page over the type and it would white it out. And so you could then blow it dry and then type over it. Primitive pain in the ass. So that it was really computers was the major thing. Very close behind that was the internet, the web, because suddenly, when we used to write copy back then, we'd go to the library and desperately search for books or magazines on the topic we're writing about, and you were limited to whatever they had in their collection. Now you can get everything. Plus, it's faster and easier. And the third one that makes a huge difference, and there are plenty others, but the third one that makes a huge difference is email, because you do your draft. In the old days, you'd be doing your draft, and it'd be 4 o'clock, and you'd worry, am I going to have time to run downstairs across the street to the photocopy center, get a copy made, put it in an envelope, and run to the post office? Now, when you're ready, click, and it's sent out. And plus, it's sent out in a way that the client, because it's an attached file, can edit it, or it's Google Doc, can edit it easy as pie.
You know what's funny is that the technology you mentioned is all the technology of the 20th century. In other words,
yes, it is.
The smartphone, I know you don't use a smartphone, but in general, the smartphone wasn't on that list. AI was not on that list, right? So what's interesting is that, and my generation will not be able to appreciate it, of course, because they're too young, but the biggest, the game changers for you were the things that we consider a given.
And that's interesting, and it gives you an advantage, because, and my kids are in this advantage. You guys, and my kids are roughly your age. My son's 33, the other one's 30. You guys grew up with, you can't imagine growing up in a world without computers and the internet, where for us, it was unnatural and it was very difficult to learn. I remember when I got my first computer, it was a K-Pro 64, K-Pro 2 in 1981 or 82. And all the memory was on that 5.25-inch floppy disk, 64K. And we were always worried, what happens if it erases? And that happens sometimes. You type a document and it would disappear. A guy named William Zinsser wrote a book about that called Writing with a Word Processor. We were very nervous about it. Now we don't have that.
No, I know exactly what you mean. I got to experience that, and the blue screen of death, that pretty much kills your...
Yeah, we've all had the blue screen of death. Exactly.
Yes. I mean, it wipes out your hard drive. I mean, you're done. You have to reinstall the Windows. I used to worry about that a lot because I used to be a gamer. So, like, anytime I would install a game and everything, and then the computer would freeze or break, or there's going to be a virus or anything, be like, oh my God, I have to format the disk, and I have to reinstall the game. I lost all my progress. Did I save the game on another disk? Did I burn the disk before? It's such a nightmare. I remember the first year I had my first computer, which I only got in 2002, just so you understand. Like, my first engaging a computer was in 2002. I think I reinstalled my Windows like 80 times because something would always break. It was Windows XP. I knew the serial number by heart. Like, it was just, I used to do it almost every single day. I got really efficient at it. I knew every which way, by the way, you could install a Windows on a computer. Well, thanks for this conversation. I really enjoyed it. Now,
Me too. It was my pleasure.
Listening to this podcast, we have a wide variety of people. Like I said, could be sales professionals, could be business owners, could be people who are just starting an online business, could be affiliate marketers, could be people running Shopify stores or selling stuff on Amazon, coaches, consultants, could be all kinds of stuff. And my question to you is, where can we send them to have them learn more about you, but as well as maybe you've got a resource, a book that you'd like to mention that would benefit our listeners?
So as far as where to send them online, if they can remember my last name, B as in boy, L-Y, my website is bly.com. And in terms of books, I've written a number, but the sort of the one that everyone goes to is called the Copywriter's Handbook.
The Copywriter's Handbook. Awesome. So we'll include the link to the Copywriter's Handbook and to Bob's website in the show notes. So if you're listening on Spotify or any other platform, you can head over to listbuildinglifestyleshow.com and find this information. And yeah, Bob, thank you so much for spending this hour with me. I really appreciate it. It was great to get a seasoned veteran perspective on the game these days, because when you're in it, you really can't see it the same way. So thank you so much. And until next time we chat, have a good one.